I used to set long-term goals. There's what I want to be when I'm 65 years old and ready for retirement or so, which, I used to think retirement was a thing that you get to, and I have zero desire to ever retire. Like,
Right.
what am I going to do? I'm not the kind of guy who's going to sit on a beach and sip cocktails all day for
Yeah.
35 years of my life. It's not going to happen. So, and then even goals that I set out that were 10 or 15 years down the road, and then you try to like backtrack it, right? So I'd set like 65-year-old goals, and here's Tim when I'm, 40 years old, and then here's where I want to be when I'm 30 years old, and so I'd backtrack the goals, and then here's my 12-month goals, and then my monthly goals, and hypothetically, you do the monthly activities and you hit those monthly goals, then eventually you'll hit your annual goals, then your 5-year goals and your 20-year goals and everything else, right? It falls in line. But what I found is that goals and achievement, it's not like an additive subtractive type thing. It's a multiplier. So and you got to keep your head down, right? Like a lot of times people think success is like, all right, hey, it's a stepping stone, right? It just go up, and it's a perfectly 45-degree line. You just keep on doing things and you have added incremental success. It's not like that. It's a pretty flat line until all of a sudden it goes straight up and like a rocket ship,
right?
And I flatlined for a long time, probably 7 or 8 years, until finally it started going upward. And then I've had, astronomical growth over the past few years, because I just kept my head down. But what I found, especially since that it started going vertical, was that my goals changed dramatically. My goal used to be $100 million real estate portfolio. Last year, I took down $100 million deal, a single deal that was $100 million. Right? So all of a sudden that stuff changes pretty dramatically. So I don't even set long-term goals anymore. I just set kind of like 24 to 36-month goals. And I really don't go out longer than that. So, my 24-month goal right now is to hit $1 billion in assets that I own. I'm at about 400 million right now.
Nice.
And that'll get me to a certain level where here's the thing, like your lifestyle doesn't change that much.
No.
After you get to a certain point, if you can make $1 million a year, I don't know. So what if you make $5 million? What else can you afford? There's not that much more, right? I live on the beach, right? I have a house up in the mountains. I even bought an island, 110-acre island.
Nice.
That I'm doing like short-term rentals on and just kind of having some fun with. And I guess my point is, like, I don't know. I don't set long-term goals, and my goals have changed pretty dramatically once I hit my financial goals, because that was always the driver for me. Now I'm more looking at lifestyle and what do I want to spend my time on.
Right. Absolutely. I think it's the freedom of time comes after freedom of financials. So you mentioned about like all these years that there's a lot of, it sounds like you're a type of person who's learning forward, like falling forward, learning from your mistake, especially, thank you for sharing, like sometimes you can be flatlining. And all these years, you are incrementally increasing your knowledges. It's just at one particular use of time, you remember the way you're doing over there. Can you kind of share with us a little bit more, maybe pick a mistake that you have made in the past, a failure, the vast amount of, lesson that you learned from that. Because I remember one of these shows that they always talk about, like the biggest failure show or something like that. So was wondering if you can kind of pinpoint a particular, deal or incident.
Yeah, I mean, there's countless, right?
Yeah.
People think failure is the opposite of success. No, it's part of success. You cannot have success without failure. Yeah. And so maybe that's a big lesson learned, right? Trying to not fail, and then realizing, like, guess what? Not taking action is far more failure than actually taking action and messing up, right? Because even in real estate, you're like, all right, what if I buy this $100,000 house and it doesn't go right? Then I could lose $100,000.
Yeah.
You're not going to lose $100,000. Like, worst case scenario, you fire sale it for $90,000 and you lose 10 grand, right? And so we create this bigger monster in our heads than it really is in real life, So like that was something, letting fear kind of get in my way. I think it would go back to like a big lesson that I learned is like, I was never content. I was always, very ambitious, wanting to like light the world on fire. And for me, you don't hit your goals usually that you set in 12 months, right? We're usually pretty ambitious of what we want to accomplish in the next 12 months. And we overestimate what we can accomplish in 12 months typically.
Right.
But we grossly underestimate what we can do in 3 to 5 years. That whole
Right.
compound effect, that snowball effect is a very real thing. And if
Right.
you just put your head down and you say, hey, here's what I want to do in 12 months and here's what I want to do in 5 years, I bet you most people probably would not reach their 12-month goal, but I bet they would just completely what's the word I'm looking,
Like blow through. Yeah.
eclipse their
Yeah.
5-year goal, right? I
Yeah.
think they would probably 3 to 5x it if they
Yeah.
just kept their head down. But what happens is most people in that 2 to 3 year range, before they really become an expert about with what they're doing, they're like, oh, this isn't working. I've given it a year. I've given it 2 years. It's not working. I'm jumping ship. And they go and start something new. And they're
Yeah.
never an expert at anything because they've never given the time to become an expert. It takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at anything.
Yeah.
It's a statistical fact.
Yeah.
Right. And if you think about 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, that's 2,000 hours per year. That means you need at least 5 years of something before you really become an expert at it. And so if you want to get involved in real estate or start a new business, you got to dedicate 3 to 5 years minimum before you say, hey, I'm going to go and, jump ship and try something new.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so switch gear a little bit, that you're great at building your team. Can you kind of recall back when and who did you hire as your first employee? And then what advice you have for small business owners for their first couple hires?
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. I think that has been one of the biggest game changers, is surrounding myself with a great team and hiring great people and bringing on A players into my organization. That's what really allows for massive growth and better lifestyle for the business owner as well. I can go on vacation and not have to worry about somebody or, the business falling or failing or, coming off the wheels kind of a thing, because I know great people are watching. In fact, it's probably gonna be better when I come back than when I left.
Right.
But yeah, I think when I was a solo act, I was a solo entrepreneur until about 2015. And I went out to a real estate mastermind. So before I was doing everything, right? I'm trying to find the deals. I'm raising the money on it. I'm doing due diligence. I'm signing the closing documents. I'm meeting the contractors. I'm evicting tenants. I'm posting notices. I'm going to eviction court. I'm meeting the bailiff whenever they get kicked out. Sometimes I'm swinging the hammer and doing the cleaning and doing all that stuff on my own. Going to the properties to collect rent, handling the maintenance. I was doing all of it.
Yeah.
And I see these big businesses. I'm like, how do they become a big business? And the way that they do it is they build a team. And so I went out to this real estate, or it was a mastermind, and there were about 15 entrepreneurs sitting in a room, going around for 2 days, just talking about their biggest hurdle that they were facing in business at that time. And mine was hands down, I was just, trying to burn the midnight oil and trying to just go and try to do more, but I was confined by the 24 hours I had in a day.
Yeah.
And so when it came around to me, they're like, dude, you just got to get some stuff off your plate. Why don't you hire an assistant? And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, yeah, just hire an assistant and give them a bunch of stuff that doesn't make money. And I was like, all right, well, it's one, got to be more complicated than that. And then two, I made 6 figures for the first time ever in 2014.
Yeah.
And, an assistant's going to cost me probably $35,000 to $40,000.
Right. Yeah.
And so in Cleveland, Ohio. So I'm thinking, that's going to take about a third of my income away. And now what do I do? They're like, listen, it's not a $36,000 risk. It's a $3,000 per month risk.
Right.
Can you risk it for 2 months? And if it doesn't work out, you let them go and you go back to banging your head against the wall.
Right.
And I was like, it's a different way of looking at it, right? It's a different perspective from somebody who did have a big team, who had the lifestyle, who went on vacation for 6 weeks at a time to exotic places all over the world, and their business kept on spinning. Right. Yeah. And so I was like, all right, maybe they know something that I don't know. Yeah. And that's what I did. I ended up coming back. I hired an assistant and I gave them everything on my, that I did on a weekly basis, everything that didn't make money. So all non-revenue generating activities went to the assistant. That became their job description. Yeah. It was just everything that I was doing that didn't make money. I focused on the things that actually made money in business. Because I was the business owner, right? I needed to go and drive revenue. So once all that stuff was off my plate, all of a sudden I can just focus on revenue generating activities. And guess what? All of a sudden revenue spiked, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm making more money. And then you can hire somebody else. The next hire that I would suggest would be either like a sales or acquisitions kind of a person, right? Whoever can drive more revenue. It's because once you have revenue solves all problems, right? You get in a lawsuit, no problem. Hire an attorney, right? Just pay money for an attorney to go battle it. If there's constraints on your team, no problem. I have money. I can go hire somebody else to come back on, give everybody a little bit of relief. Slip and fall, liability, like anything like that. Money solves all problems, offers growth, offers, you could put it towards personal education. You could put it towards marketing dollars. You could buy assets, like residual income producing assets. Money solves all problems. Revenue solves all problems. So when you drive revenue, everything else falls into place.